Hello and welcome to my vlog. As you can tell from the title, today I'm going to be talking about submitting my poetry manuscript for potential publication. I have been really debating if I wanted to make this video. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that it would be really nice for my future self to have this to look back on, especially once I hopefully publish a poetry collection. So shout out to future Amanda if you're watching this. I wanted to talk about my background as a writer in case you've never seen any of my content, and also where I am in terms of publishing my manuscript. So my poetry manuscript is essentially my MFA thesis. I publish a lot of individual poems in literary magazines and anthologies and journals, and I'm also a poetry editor for a literary and arts magazine. Also, I totally forgot to mention this when I was talking about the background of where my manuscript is right now in terms of the publishing process, but recently it was a semi-finalist for a poetry prize, which basically means that out of all the submissions I made it into the top 30. That is a very good sign, even though I lost the contest. Basically, it feels to me like a little push that I'm in the right direction. So today I'm planning on revisiting and revising my manuscript again. I like to do this every now and then just to make sure I'm continuously looking at it and updating it with my current writing, things that make sense for the manuscript. And also if I'm getting a bunch of rejections right in a row, it's good to kind of reevaluate what might be going wrong, or see if there's things I can fix in my manuscript. Up until now, I've been casually submitting to about 2 to 5 presses every month for about 8-ish months now, which kind of seems like a lot, but it's kind of typical in the writing world. And I also try to be pretty selective about what presses I submit to, what prizes and contests I would even want to enter. But I know I'm definitely going to start off by reading my manuscript in its entirety, because that is something I don't think I've done for a while. Obviously I'm very familiar with it, but sometimes it's easy to lose track of tiny details like the order or the flow. And I've also made changes to it recently, so I'll see how it goes. I also recently redefined my channel focus, because I was kind of evaluating what things do I really care about that I know I'm gonna care about for a long time, and those things ended up being poetry / writing, spirituality, and self-improvement. I updated my bio to have a better vision of this, which I think makes more sense than me trying to explain it right now. Update, I am now back from the coffee shop I went to, and I'm finally eating my lunch, I guess. It's pretty late, but I forgot to eat it earlier. I'm gonna do that and then keep looking at my manuscript. I actually just read the entire thing. That's pretty much all I did at the coffee shop. I was reading my entire manuscript from start to finish, which if you think about it is kind of insane, because it's the same as reading an entire poetry collection. So that took a while, but it went pretty well. I did mark a few things that might need to be changed. I need to look at them in a second. It's such a nice day out today. One of the warmest days we've had so far this year in Illinois, which is great. The sun is in my face, but I just finished. I ended up making one tiny edit. I basically just removed a poem that I didn't think was strong enough, and I replaced it with another poem that I feel tied in better. I don't even know why the poem I added wasn't in it in the first place. This happens almost every single time I sit down to reevaluate my collection, but I also realized that it's a lot better than I thought it was. I feel sometimes as writers we can be super hard on ourselves, or sometimes I just have this perception that my collection isn't that good, or that's why it's getting rejected a bunch. When I actually sit down and read the whole thing, I kind of realize it's pretty strong. I feel proud of it. It's my best, probably the best I can do at this time. Hello, I have moved inside because the sun was getting in my face too much out there. Very quickly, I wanted to talk about the revision process and how it often gets overlooked, both for individual poems and for a collection overall. Often I think people perceive the revision process as being boring and unimportant. It's actually an integral part of writing, one of the most important parts actually. No matter how talented you are, it's near impossible to get everything absolutely 100% perfect the first time you type out a draft. Audre Lorde, I believe, even has a poetry collection that is just a bunch of her previously published poems that she has revised. A lot of writers, including her, believe that revision is a never-ending process and that a poem is never truly done. Another important thing related to this topic is the importance of formatting your manuscript right. Poetry manuscripts are typically between around like 60 to 100 pages, give or take. It depends on the publisher guidelines for different presses. Every press is totally different. Some allow shorter manuscripts, some allow longer manuscripts, and there's other standards when it comes to formatting. Like some publishers ask for no acknowledgement pages, some publishers ask for page numbers on every page or your last name on every page. Like there's so many different style requirements when it comes to this type of thing, and it's really important to follow them exactly as listed to the best of your ability, because some publishers will like immediately reject your work if it does not follow their formatting guidelines. I wanted to talk now about the actual submission process in terms of how and where I find places to submit, since obviously poetry does not utilize the typical prose format of querying / writing to agents. I would say the number one place where I find places to submit is Poets and Writers magazine. Let me make sure my address is covered up right now. I am a subscriber of the physical magazine, and in every single issue near the end they have a section on deadlines where they go over grants, awards, contests, presses, people looking for a manuscript, and they list all of the deadlines and costs associated with submitting to each place. If you're not a subscriber, they also have a website, I believe it's pw.org, where you can find, I think, a similar like database of places to submit. Another thing I do sometimes is I just browse on Submittable, Duotrope, Chill Subs, and other random literary magazine submitting places. Another option that I sometimes do is noticing which presses my favorite poetry collections publish with. Like when I'm reading poetry collections, just noticing where they publish, if I like the aesthetic and format and setup of a book. Another aspect of the submitting process that I did not realize until I started submitting my collection myself is the cost. The cost of submitting can be kind of high. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I've been submitting to around 2 to 5 different presses and contests every single month. What I found in my experience is that the submission fee to submit to these places is around $20 to $25. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. So as you can imagine, submitting to 2 to 5 of those can add up really quickly. So it kind of depends what your approach is. For me personally, being more selective has been helpful. So now that I've revised my manuscript and I feel like it's at a good place to submit and I feel confident in it, I'm going to start submitting to contests and presses. I already went through this magazine and highlighted opportunities that would be a good option for me. So I guess I'm just going to go through and look at all of the ones I highlighted and do some research on each press. What I look for really is the ways that they promote their current books, the aesthetic of the website, the aesthetic of the books themselves. That's like important to me, and just overall their mission and philosophy. Update, I just submitted to 2 different prizes. I feel like it was a pretty productive day for me today, so I'm just gonna end this video with like closing advice for poets and just in general in terms of like submitting. So to bring up Poets and Writers magazine again, I know I've talked about them a few times so far. If you read the magazine, you'll know that sometimes they have a section that is dedicated to promoting debut poets. And through reading a few of these, it has become apparent to me that it can take years for a collection to be accepted for publication. Unfortunately for writers, uncertainty, self-doubt, and rejection are kind of like built into the industry. But it's important to celebrate small wins and really ground yourself in your reason for writing and submitting. So like for me, getting to the semi-finalist stage in a contest is something I really celebrate, and that gives me hope to keep moving forward despite all of the rejections that I've gotten so far. There's a lot that we can't control in the publishing world, so it's important not to become dependent on external validation and to really believe in your work enough to know that it will eventually find its home. That is pretty much all for this video. I hope it was entertaining and helpful in some way. I will link my writing website and social media down below in case you want to check me out there. And I hope everyone watching this has the best of luck in their writing and publishing journeys. Also, if you made it this far in the video, you are truly the best and I appreciate you so much. So with that all being said, I will see you next time. Peace out.